Hello, everyone, and welcome to the eighth episode of Get the Fog Out with me, Sanky. And today we're going to talk about something that I find funny and yet a little bit inspirational for myself. Is that, almost every success story that we hear has the same rhythm. Someone has failed a few times, he had like big ideas, he had worked hard, he took a lot of risk, he took big risk, and they made it. And all of us, we love that story because it gives us hope. But have you ever wondered how many people did the exact same thing and didn't make it? Because we don't talk about them, and we can't because their stories never surfaced. Nobody knows about them. And that is what is called a survivorship bias. The mistake of learning only from the people who survived, who made it big. And core idea behind it is that if we make conclusions based only on visible success stories while forgetting the invisible failures, we see what has worked, not what didn't work. And because of that, we start believing that success is more predictable than it really is. Think about it for a second that for every startup that you see on TechCrunch, or in our case, maybe Shark Tank, or any news that you hear about any new startup or any new founder, there are thousands that died quietly. They were focusing on the same thing, they had the same idea, they were following almost the same path, but they never made it. For every musician that we love, there are thousands who never got heard. And for every overnight success, there is a decade of invisible failure that we never saw. And the idea, I think, actually came from World War II. It is when, the Allied engineers were studying the planes that came back from the mission. And they noticed that the bullet holes were on the wings and the tail section. And, like everyone normally, how they see, especially if they are doing a first order thinking, in which I talked about, like the second order thinking in my previous, naturally they thought that, okay, let's reinforce these areas because they have bullet holes there, so we need to make sure that these are the parts that survive. It makes sense, right? But there was a guy called Abraham Wald said something very brilliant. He said that, you are looking at the planes that came back from the war after fighting. You should actually reinforce the areas that has no bullet holes, because those planes are the one that got hit there and they never made it back. Like, think about that for a second, right? How this thinking pattern actually made sure that we are looking at the right picture. And especially for me, when I read the story, it changed the way I understand data forever. Because sometimes what's missing tells us more than what is visible. So fast forward to like today's world, in today's era, we just swap the airplanes for entrepreneurs and read interviews where founders say things like, I just trusted my gut, we stayed consistent, we never gave up, we just hustle. And yes, those things matter a lot. In fact, those are the primary drive behind, being an entrepreneur or a founder. And yes, these things actually matter. What about them? We never hear from them because nobody interviews the ones who didn't survive. Nobody talked to them. Nobody want to learn from them because they failed. People want to learn about the success stories. And that is the bias that we are talking about here. Like, what we think, if I get what they got, but we are copying from a filtered data set. Success only, the things that actually work. And let me be honest with you, is that I have fallen for this bias as well a lot of the times. There were times where I would obsess over case studies, reading startup postmortems, studying viral creators, going through like the blueprints of successful startup stories, even in my close circle. And I used to think that if I decode what they did, I'll figure out a way in a similar manner. If I just follow their steps and make it somehow in my own, I'll also become successful. But over time, I realized after thinking a little bit more and got to know about this survivorship bias is that you can actually copy someone's process but not their context. You don't inherit their timing, their network, or their luck. You don't have their same starting line. And the irony is that most people who actually make it are not even sure what part of their story caused it. So, treating their journey like a formula, like something that we can just follow, copy, and then voila, we have a successful startup story. Is that, like the ideas that I had of, like, even if you, for example, if I am building something and it has like a huge potential in the market, it's gonna like revolutionize the world. What if there are some mistakes that I make? If I'm not able to find a balance between my health and I crash, there is like a saying that you're only one hospital bill away from being poor. So, failure teaches you what success hides. The failed businesses teaches you more about the market timing. The song that never released teaches you more about creative honesty. And the deal that fell apart teaches you more about people. Winners show you what worked once, and failure shows you what usually doesn't. If you really want to understand success, you have to study the both, the seen and the unseen. Because, if you try to understand why those people fail or why their ideas fail and what was the cause of the failure, and you try to work around it, you try to avoid it, and you try to basically bypass those failures and be smart, then the roadmap to the success is gonna be a lot more easier, because you can predict failures a lot easier than you can predict success. I'll give you like a bit of a process that you can follow to think beyond bias. So how do we stop falling for it? Here is something that helped me a little bit, is that first step is to zoom out of the data set. When you see success, ask how many others tried this and didn't make it. Second step is talk to the quiet ones. Most wisdom sits with people who almost made it. Their lessons are raw, unpolished, but real. They exactly tell you what mistakes they made that you should never follow, and safeguard yourself in your own journey. Third step is don't copy, but contextualize it. Built around your own reality, your own team, your own stage of life, your own philosophies, your own principles. Don't just copy and paste any successful formula. Fourth is redefine success. Sometimes the survivor isn't the one who won, but the one who didn't lose themselves in the process. So the deeper message here is that we live in a world that rewards visibility. If you are not seen, you don't exist. Nobody matters. The dialogue called "Nobody remembers the man who came second." But did anyone ask, like, how did it happen? Like, what were some of the mistakes or shortcomings that he had, that he didn't get a chance to become the first man? So if we assume visibility equals, but maybe the truth hides in the stories that never went viral. Maybe the most valuable lesson are in the journeys that ended quietly. And maybe, just maybe, we make better decisions if we stop chasing the visible fews and start learning from the invisible manys that we have. So the next time when you see someone's success story, don't ask them, how can I be more like you? What did you do? How can I become like you? Ask them, what can I learn from the ones who didn't make it? Because every survivor stands on a mountain on invisible stories, and that's where real wisdom lives. Not in the highlighted reels, but in the silence after the curtain falls. And as always, thank you for watching. If this made you think a little bit deeply, please like, share, subscribe, because here we're gonna talk a lot more about founder psychology, entrepreneurship, technology, innovation, thinking deeper, building slower, and playing the long game. So thank you for watching. See you in the next one.
Just cold emails and an ocean dock where I cast these spells. Boys chat hype, I chat system, speaking code, design with wisdom. AI bot with an astral vision, BPM jump but the soul stay rhythm.